Okay, so let's just jump right in and unpack this.
Yeah.
Because if you ask, the average person or even a tech journalist, what is going to determine whether AI saves the world or completely ends it?
They immediately start talking about the code,
Exactly. They talk about the
the
algorithm,
compute power,
right? The training data, the technical guardrails, all of that.
which I mean is the natural place to look, right?
Yeah.
It is where the quote-unquote magic is happening. It's that black box we are all trying to peer into.
Yeah. But we have a stack of research here today for this deep dive that basically argues we are looking in completely the wrong place.
We really are.
We are diving into this concept from Jonathan Westover's work on leading through the singularity. And the thesis here is honestly a bit unsettling because it is just so...
Bureaucratic.
Yes.
It is uncomfortable, yes.
Yeah.
Because it shifts the focus entirely. The central argument isn't about Python scripts or GPU clusters or anything like that.
Right.
It's that the real kill switch for humanity,
Mm.
the thing that will actually decide our fate, might literally be an HR policy.
Which sounds completely ridiculous when you say it out loud. I mean, we
Yeah.
are worried about Skynet, and this research is talking about performance reviews and org charts.
It sounds totally mundane,
Mm-hmm.
but if you dig into the logic, it is actually profound.
How so?
Well, the research argues that technical alignment, which is getting the AI to do what we actually want it to do, is physically impossible without organizational alignment.
Okay.
Because if the human system building the AI is broken, if the culture is toxic, or if the communication lines are just clogged, the digital system doesn't stand a chance.
So effectively, this is the ultimate people problem, just disguised as a math problem.
That is exactly it.
Mm.
People management isn't just some support function in an AI lab.
Right.
It is foundational to AI governance. The culture, the leadership structure, the psychological safety within companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, DeepMind, that is what will determine the trajectory of superintelligence.
Okay, so let's paint a picture for everyone listening of where this is actually happening. We call them frontier AI labs. And in my head, I'm picturing this weird mix of a dusty university library and a Silicon Valley mosh pit. Is that anywhere near accurate?
That is actually a really perfect description of the tension described in the text. You have two completely different cultures just smashing into each other.
Give me the breakdown.
On one side, you have the academic culture. These are researchers who are used to 10-year timelines, open collaboration, publishing papers, and having total intellectual freedom.
And on the other side, you have the startup vibe.
Exactly. High-stakes product engineering. We are talking quarterly deadlines, massive investor pressure to monetize proprietary secrets, and basically the need to ship products yesterday.
And stuck in the middle of this car crash are the people actually building the brain.
Yeah.
There is this concept in the source material that I found absolutely fascinating, the talent paradox.
Oh, this is critical. So think about a traditional company, right? Say a car manufacturer or a major bank. The CEO generally knows more about how the business works than the junior analyst.
Sure, or at least they understand the macro risks better.
Right. Authority flows down because wisdom flows down.
But in AI.
In AI,
Yeah.
the people with the deepest understanding of the risks, the ones who truly understand the emergent behaviors of a model or how it might deceive us, are often the 26 or 28-year-old PhDs who are actually writing the code.
So you have a situation where the intern, and I know there aren't interns, but relatively junior staff, they might know more about whether the model is about to go rogue than the executive board does.
Precisely. The text refers to this as epistemic authority tensions.
Let's break that down for a second. Epistemic authority.
It just means authority based on knowledge, epistemic proximity to the actual code.
Okay.
Traditional corporate hierarchies work on rank right. The vice president outranks the manager. But here, the hierarchy is completely upside down. The knowledge authority sits at the very bottom of the org chart. So if your management culture doesn't account for that, you have decision makers who literally do not understand the implications of the decisions they are making.
That is terrifying because the person with the stop button might not know they need to press it.
And the person who knows they need to press it doesn't have the button.
Man, and it gets worse, right? When you layer in what the text calls the pacing problem.
The pacing problem, yes. Think about how a normal corporation moves. You have quarterly earnings calls, you have annual performance reviews, you have 3-year strategic plans.
Right, corporate time. Very
Totally.
slow.
Slow, rhythmic, linear processes. But AI development is exponential. It is logarithmic. The technology is evolving weeks or even months faster than the decision-making loops of the organization can even process.
So the tech is running at Mach 10, and the HR department is still filling out forms for the annual retreat.
Exactly. And that mismatch creates a massive safety gap. Decisions are being made on outdated information because the information flow is simply too slow for the reality of the technology.
This brings us to a term in the deep dive that I think is the absolute core of this whole discussion.
Existential psychological safety.
Yes. We have all heard of normal psychological safety. That's standard corporate speak for, I can admit I made a typo and my boss won't scream at me.
Right.
But the source introduces something much heavier.
This is moving way beyond standard errors. Existential psychological safety is the organizational condition where an employee can raise concerns about long-term catastrophic risks without being penalized.
Penalized how exactly?
Being labeled a doomer or a blocker, a pessimist, or simply being managed out of the company because you quote-unquote aren't aligned with the mission.
See, that is the culture clash again. If the company mantra is move fast and break things, and I'm the guy saying, hey, if we move this fast, we might break civilization.
You're the buzzkill.
I'm the buzzkill. I'm the one slowing down the stock price.
And if you feel that pressure, you stay silent. Imagine a researcher at 2 in the morning sees a signal that a model is displaying deceptive behavior.
Okay.
If they know that raising a red flag will kill their bonus or stall their promotion, they might just rationalize it away. They might say, oh, it's probably nothing, I'll check it next week.
And in exponential time next week is way too late.
Right. And we have a concrete example of what happens when this breaks down. The text discusses the OpenAI governance crisis of November 2023.
Okay, now just to be clear to everyone listening, we're not here to relitigate the drama of that weekend or pick sides between Sam Altman and the board.
No, definitely not.
But the source material treats this strictly as a case study in people management failure.
It does. And what stands out in the analysis is that the crisis wasn't necessarily about the technology itself failing, but about the communication failing.
Structures.
Yes, you had unclear decision rights. You had a total breakdown between the board, who were supposed to be the governance brake, and the leadership team.
It exposed that exact tension we just talked about, commercial acceleration versus safety governance.
Exactly.
And the fallout wasn't just headlines. The text mentions it led to the departure of several safety-focused researchers.
Which perfectly illustrates the fragility of safety culture. You can spend 5 years building a team of the most ethical, safety-conscious researchers in the world. But if the governance structure collapses or loses legitimacy, those people leave.
And then what?
And when the safety-conscious people leave, the organization becomes objectively more dangerous.
Wow. So we have established the problem. The labs are high-pressure cookers, the hierarchies are upside down, and speaking up is literally dangerous to your career.
Bleak.
If we stop here, I am just going to go hide under my desk. But the source material actually pivots to solutions, which I appreciate. And these aren't just let's do trust falls and team building exercises.
No, they are structural, almost radical changes.
Mm.
The text shifts from the diagnosis to what we might call organizational innovations.
Structural fixes to the human problem.
Exactly.
Let's start with one that I found really interesting. Structure dissent and red teaming.
Okay.
Now, we hear red teaming a lot in tech security. It's hiring people to play the bad guys. But the text argues that most companies are actually doing this wrong.
Because most companies have the red team report to the product manager.
Which makes no sense.
Think about the conflict of interest there. I am building a product, and I am also the boss of the guy trying to find fatal flaws in it. If he finds a flaw that delays my launch, I am going to be annoyed.
So I might tell him to look a little less hard, or I might just bury his report in a drawer somewhere.
Exactly. The text argues for structural independence. The red team needs to report outside the product hierarchy, maybe directly to the board or a distinct safety officer.
It uses an analogy to aviation here that I found super helpful, the ASRS, the Aviation Safety Reporting System.
This is really the gold standard for safety culture. In aviation, pilots can report errors, even their own errors, like flying at the wrong altitude completely anonymously.
And they don't get punished.
As long as it wasn't criminal negligence, no. The FAA guarantees that the report cannot be used against them for enforcement.
That is amazing.
The goal is purely systemic improvement. It's basically, tell us how we almost crashed, so no one else actually crashes.
I love that. It is moving from a culture of don't screw up to a culture of tell us how you screwed up so we can fix the system.
The text argues AI labs need this exact same infrastructure. A safe harbor for reporting risks where the goal is learning, not blame.
Makes sense.
If a researcher accidentally trains a model on dangerous data, they need to be able to say, I messed up immediately without fear of being fired.
Because if they hide it, that dangerous data stays in the model.
Exactly. And that hidden data becomes a ticking bomb.
Okay, so reporting is one thing, but power is another. Reporting a problem doesn't really help if the boss just ignores it. That brings us to distributed veto authority.
This is a radical concept for most businesses. Usually a CEO has the final say on everything, but in high-stakes AI safety, the text suggests that safety researchers or ethics teams should have the power to actually halt a deployment.
Not just advise against it.
Right. Halt it. A full stop.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Imagine you are the CEO. You have got $1 billion on the line, a product launch set for Tuesday, and one safety researcher says, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And they can just shut the whole company down. Isn't that a recipe for complete paralysis?
It is a massive business risk. You are absolutely right. But look at the alternative. The alternative is that the safety team is advisory only. And history tells us that when safety is just an advisor to profit, profit wins 99 times out of 100.
So it changes safety from a suggestion to a hard constraint.
Yes. A literal kill switch in the hands of the people who actually understand the danger.
Speaking of hard constraints, we have to talk about Anthropic. The text does a deep dive into their specific corporate structure, the long-term benefit trust.
It is so unique.
I read this section 3 times because I honestly couldn't believe it was real.
Anthropic is a public benefit corporation, which is rare enough in this space. But they added this trust structure on top to specifically solve the problem of profit overriding safety.
Explain how the money and the power are separated here. Because usually if I invest $1 billion into a company, I get $1 billion worth of votes.
Not here. The trust holds a special class of stock called Class T shares. These shares have zero economic value. They do not get dividends. They aren't worth money. But they have the power to elect and remove the majority of the board of directors.
Wait, so the people running the company, the board, are chosen by a trust that doesn't care about making money?
Correct. The trust's legal mandate is the long-term benefit of humanity.
Wow.
It effectively insulates the safety mission from the whims of the market. If the investors say, we want to launch now to make the stock go up, the board can say, no, it's not safe, and the investors literally cannot fire them.
That is wild. It is basically a company putting handcuffs on its own greed.
It is a structural pre-commitment. They're acknowledging that in the heat of the moment, the temptation to prioritize profit will just be too high. So they built a structure that removes that option entirely.
Which connects perfectly back to incentives. You can't tell your people safety first and then pay them only when they ship a new product.
That is the classic incentive restructuring problem. If I am a researcher and I have stock options that only vest if we launch GPT-7 by Christmas, I have a massive financial incentive to ignore a safety warning.
That is just the reality of human behavior. Even good people will rationalize bad decisions if their mortgage depends on it.
Exactly. The text suggests countering this with very specific financial tools. For example, long-term vesting schedules. We're talking 5 to 10 years.
So you don't get rich quick. You only get rich if the company is still standing and the world is still standing in a decade.
And then there's the idea of safety milestone bonuses.
I love this idea, but how do you measure it? How do you pay someone for a disaster that didn't happen?
It is tricky, but you can pay for the discovery of latent risks. Imagine getting a $100,000 bonus because you found a bug that delayed the launch by 6 months.
That requires a complete flip in how management thinks. You delayed the product, here is a massive check.
But if that delay prevents a catastrophic regulatory failure or a major safety incident, that $100,000 is the best money the company ever spent. You are paying for the non-event, the catastrophe that didn't happen.
I want to pivot back to the human side of this again, because there is a term in the text that really hit me hard: moral injury.
It is a really heavy concept. It's usually borrowed from military psychology.
Right, soldiers who have to do things that violate their core moral code.
But here they are applying it to coders and researchers.
Which seems extreme until you think about it.
It makes complete sense if you consider the stakes. Researchers in these frontier labs aren't just building a new app for food delivery. They genuinely believe they are building a new species or a godlike intelligence. They carry the weight of humanity's future on their shoulders.
That sounds like a lot of pressure for a Tuesday morning stand-up meeting.
It is. And if they feel their organization is being reckless, or if they are forced to work on something they feel is deeply unsafe,
or if they see safety corners being cut just to beat a competitor.
exactly, that causes deep, deep psychological distress.
It's not just, man, I really hate my job. It's my job is actively endangering the world.
And that leads to severe burnout. And crucially, it leads to people leaving the field just when we need their expertise the most. The text argues that protecting researchers from moral injury is a literal safety imperative. You need these people clear-headed and engaged.
And one way to protect them and the world, honestly, is this idea of pre-commitment mechanisms. This one blew my mind. It's the idea of the Mission Preservation Covenant.
This is where we see if these companies really mean what they say. A mission preservation covenant is an agreement made in advance.
Like a treaty.
Basically. For example, an organization commits that if a competitor gets close to dangerous AGI without safety specs, they will pause their own work and share their safety IP with the competitor.
Just stop and think about that for a second. That is pure anti-capitalism.
Yeah.
That is telling your shareholders if Google is about to blow up the world, we're going to stop trying to beat them and go help them fix their code.
It goes against every single instinct of the market. The instinct is to crush the competition. That is why the text emphasizes that this requires incredibly strong organizational design.
You can't just hope for the best.
No, you cannot just rely on a CEO being a good person in the moment. The pressure from investors will be way too high. You need a binding covenant that forces that cooperation.
It's like tying your hands to the mast before the sirens start singing. You have to make the decision now while you are sane because you will not be able to make it when the race is actually on.
Precisely. And that requires what the text calls epistemic humility.
Which brings us to Google DeepMind. The text highlights them for maintaining flat research hierarchies.
Yes. The idea is that leaders absolutely need to be able to say, I don't know. In a field this complex and fast-moving, certainty is dangerous.
Because if a leader pretends to know everything, the junior staff won't speak up.
Exactly. DeepMind's approach encourages the flow of information from the bottom up. It acknowledges that the person closest to the data likely sees the cliff edge way before the person sitting in the corner office.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this? We have gone through the problems, the pacing, the upside-down hierarchy, the intense pressure. We have looked at the solutions, the veto power, the trust, the covenants. When you synthesize all of this, what is the core takeaway?
The main takeaway is that you cannot build safe AI systems within unsafe organizational cultures. It is impossible.
Right.
You can have the best mathematical alignment theory in the world. You can have the absolute perfect code. But if your culture silences dissent, or if your incentives prioritize speed over safety, that math is not going to save you.
So organizational alignment is the prerequisite for technical alignment.
That is the core truth. And honestly, it is empowering in a way.
Oh, so?
Because while we can't always control the black box of the algorithm because it learns on its own, we can control the structure of the company. We can design better HR policies. We can design better boards. We can rewrite the corporate bylaws.
The innovations like the long-term benefit trust or distributed veto authority, those are just as innovative as the transformer model itself.
I would argue they're even more critical right now. We are building the machine that builds the future. And the machine isn't just the computer. It's the people and the processes around it.
That brings us to a final thought. We want to leave you with a question, something the text alludes to with this idea of pre-commitment.
It really is a fundamental question of trust.
Right. So imagine you are working at one of these frontier labs. Your team discovers a technology that could, say, solve climate change forever, but it also has a 10% chance of causing a global catastrophe. And you know a competitor is racing to beat you to it.
In that exact moment, do you trust your current HR department, your current leadership team, and your current board of directors to make the decision to stop?
If the answer is no, then the safety code just doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Something for you to really think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Thank you.